You hear the screeching of an owl, you hear the wind begin to howl. You know there's zombies on the prowl, and it's terror time again. They've got you running.
Number 7.
through the night.
Disney's Sleepy Hollow, 1949. I actually got introduced to this holiday special not too long ago. In fact, a lot of these has flipped my side, not being from America and all. But I must admit that Disney's Sleepy Hollow is a really great story. So, is this special historically accurate? Who cares, it's a cartoon! The story begins with Ichabod Crane coming to Sleepy Hollow to be the new teacher in town. And funny enough, despite his weird looks, he is a big hit with the ladies in town. But of course, the hunk in town, Brom Bones, doesn't seem to find this too funny. So time passes in Sleepy Hollow with a lot of singing, until Ichabod is introduced to the rich man's only daughter, Katrina, who Ichabod decides to woo. But wouldn't you know it, this displeases Brom, and the two of them has a rivalry to see who can get Katrina. But it seems that Ichabod is just too charming for Brom to follow. But this changes when Brom finds out that Ichabod has quite the superstition. So Brom bursts out into song and tells the story of Sleepy Hollow's headless horseman. And of course, Ichabod is scared stiff. So on his way home, being extremely scared, Ichabod quickly realizes that he is being followed by none other than the Headless Horseman. And I just want to point out that the movie really gets all creepy looking when the Headless Horseman arrives. I would say that it looks like one of those happy-go-round Disney movies at first, but then it just took a turn into a whole different genre. And as we all know, the story ends with Ichabod not being heard from ever again. Some say that he escaped, others think he got killed by the Headless Horseman. This might not be the most relevant to Halloween, but nevertheless, it is one of those stories that people used to tell around Halloween, and might still do. The pacing, I got to admit, is really great. It starts out like any other Disney movie, but as it progresses, it's getting more wild and out of hand, seen clearly in the Headless Horseman song. We actually get to know a lot about Ichabod in this Disney short, and I actually like the character development in these stories.
Terror time again. Oh, you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time.
Number 6. Garfields Halloween Adventure. Yet another classic Halloween special. This time featuring everyone's favorite lasagna-eating monster, Garfield, who just loves Halloween more than anything else. Why do I say this? Because he sings about how much he loves Halloween.
This is a night. This is the night I was created for.
So this whole episode has a lot of mini sequences fit for a newspaper comic strip, which in my opinion is what Garfield does best. But of course, seeing that this is a 24-minute special, it needs some continuity. It starts out with Garfield realizing it is Hallows Eve and is more than ready to go trick-or-treating. So him and Odie finds their costumes and are now ready to go get that booty. So what follows is two very short musical numbers, one being about pirates and the other being about not being afraid. So after they raided the neighborhood, Garfield decides that it's not enough for him and wants to cross the river in order to get more treats. They find a boat and of course, this backfires as they lose the oars and is now heading towards what seems like the end. I admit, that would have been too cruel an ending, even for Garfield. So they wash ashore close to a really spooky mansion, where they decide to go in and take a look. Here they meet a very old man. Seriously, according to his story, he would be like 110 years old. Or did I mishear something? Anyway, the old man tells them a story about pirates who swore to dig up the treasure 100 years from when they buried it, under the very same mansion. What a coincidence! So, at midnight exactly, the ghosts return. But the old man escaped, leaving our two furry friends to confront the ghosts themselves. This resulted in a chase scene followed by the end of this episode.
Not there, dummy.
I would say that for how simple this special is, it's really damn good. I mean, it has a lot of the core elements in what Halloween is all about, in my opinion at least. The costume picking, the trick-or-treating, and of course, what I feel is most important, paranormal activity. Since that aspect is really great to come across in these specials. Even the songs are rather catchy, and normally I do not like songs in animated movies too much, since they are always uninspiring and downright lazy, apart from a few good ones. These songs might not be the very best, but they catches the plot really well, especially since they didn't put any in the ghost scene. Oh yeah, the old man's story might even give you the right amount of chill. Not the story itself, but the way he tells it.
And it's terror time again. They've got you running through the
Number 5. Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween. What is there to say about Billy and Mandy? I think it's one of those shows that you either hate or love. Since the show is cruel, mean and downright sadistic at times, there's no morale, there's only goofiness and evil, and by God I freaking love this show. So the whole episode starts up with Billy and Mandy going to trick-or-treat, accompanied by Grim as always, and Irwin, which I think had some emotional issues of some sort.
Kiss me, Mandy!
The story progresses without him, and Grim tells the story of Jack, later to be called Jack-o'-lantern, and in their own way describe why Halloween is as it is. Grim's story tells about him being tricked by the trickster and of course tricking him in return, which is why Jack has a pumpkin head now. Sadly enough, they didn't have the rights to use Skellington. So when Grim ends his story, Billy and Mandy decides to split yet again, to get away from Irvin. Where Billy, as dumb as he is, goes to the exact same spot as Jack lives, and from here on out, it's basically madness upon madness by the King of Trick himself. And for his final trick, he decides to behead the Grim Reaper himself. Of course, not wanting to lose her slave, Mandy thinks up a very clever plan to interfere with Jack. But sadly enough, the Halloween trickster sees and knows all about tricks. So he captures Billy and Mandy as well. And it's now up to the knight in shining armor to save the day, which is in fact the only thing that Jack fears. Of course, I would also fear the guy who killed me. I don't want to give away the ending of this special. Let's just say, it's a laugh to die for. What's great about this episode, and feel free to disagree with me, is the complete and utter madness the whole living pumpkin brings along with it. And also the imagination in this episode, as well as the show in general. It's simply great to watch, seeing that this show is already rather grim. They still decide to try and kill off various characters. Of course they don't, but kudos for trying, right? I would say that this is a must to watch on Hallows Eve. Even if you don't like the show too much, I would still recommend this episode, just for the pure madness and creativity.
Cause it's terror time again. They've got you running through
Number
the
4.
night.
Tiny Toons Night Ghoulery. What can you say about this episode? It's 40 minutes featuring 8 short episodes. And normally, I don't really think you can tell a deep enough story about Halloween or any creepy stuff with that amount of time. But without a doubt, Tiny Toons manages to prove me wrong. It is a mishmash of old classic horror movies and thriller, if I'm not mistaken, watered down so even children can laugh at them, but at the same time still manages to keep it entertaining. It would be too much to talk about the story itself, since there's just way too many to go by. And I think that I have already said too much about every other on the list. But I can say, if you like a wacky laugh, then this is just for you. It almost has everything in one movie. Except the newer horror flicks, of course. I like how the Looney Tunes classic feel is boasting through this entire special as well. And I mean, when you can make that creepy scene with the airplane from Twilight Zone funny, then you do something right. Did you know that this gremlin is from an Adolf Hitler cartoon, where gremlins destroy his airplane? Bet you didn't know that, huh? I would say give this one a watch if you like old horror stuff and get the references.
It's terror time again, and you just might die of
Number
fright.
3.
It's a
The Halloween Tree. Did you know that this cartoon was produced entirely by Hanna-Barbera? If not, then you won't find any similarities either. Frankly, I was quite shocked when I found out that they produced this. I mean, this looks nothing like the Flintstones or Scooby-Doo for that matter. So the story starts out with 4 kids getting their costumes ready for Halloween, and of course to show Pip how amazing their costumes are. Who's Pip, you might ask? I'll let the narrator tell you.
Ah, yes, Joe Pipkin. Some say that on the day he was born, all the soda pop bottles in the world fizzed over. Pipkin, who could yell louder, sing better, and eat more popcorn. Pip, the greatest boy who ever lived.
Charming. All I got when I was born was this.
You're a mean one.
And that out of the way, the 4 kids quickly realizes that something is not quite as it should be.
Something's wrong, awfully wrong.
It appears that their best friend Pip has caught a disease I dare not to try and pronounce. And now they are heading for the hospital to pay him a visit. So they go through the ravine while Ray Bradbury tells us what this ravine is.
The ravine. The ravine was filled with varieties of darkness, night, shadows, toad eyes, and raven beaks.
They stumble upon what seems to be Pip's ghost and follows it to a haunted mansion where I'm not sure if he's the mentor or villain. Hard to tell, but for once it's a good thing. Mount Shroud, who is rather annoyed by the kids' ignorance to their costumes' origins.
Know why you're wearing bones, boy? Bah!
Oh, and he also tries to take Pip's soul. But that's not important, as he decides to teach the kids the origin of the Halloween. So he takes them on a journey throughout 4 different places and time periods to show them what their Halloween is all about. First stop is ancient Egypt, where they learn what mummies are and what they are used for. And the mummy kid has to save the day since he's the one dressed for the occasion. After this, they venture into Old England, where they learn about the sandwiches. Origin of the witches. Next is Paris, where they learn about the gargoyles. This should be the monster part of the movie. And since this topic is big, I'm glad that they went for one that is more historically correct rather than just making one up. Last but not least, they venture to Mexico to celebrate the Day of the Dead, where they learn about the Mexican values of worshipping life and their ancestors. I won't tell the ending, but I will say that you are in for a treat with this one, as it is one heart-filled, about trust and friendship, all the way through. My god, this sounds like a cheesy Care Bears movie right now. I will say that you should definitely give this one a go, since it's really great written. And you'll actually learn a few things along the way. The whole pacing is simply fantastic. It's not too slow so you get bored, but not too fast either so you won't learn anything from it. My only complaint is that they only scratch the surface of these origins. But then again, this kind of encourages you to study the true meaning of Halloween. Make you want to learn more. And when a movie does that, without hammering the message into your skull, then I would say it definitely does something right.
It's terror time again. Oh, you just might die of fright. It's terror.
Number 2. Ed, and Aries Puhaha. What is there to say about Ed, and Eddie, other than that they get more and more crazy the more episodes they make? And the Halloween Special are not an exception. It starts out with Eddie getting home from another detention and are now ready to celebrate Halloween with his 2 friends, Ed and Double D. Of course he has a scheme to make sure that they have the most candy of all. A map he got from his brother. Gee, I wonder how this turns out. This map shows the way to the best Halloween neighborhood in town, called Spookyville. Spookyville! And of course, the 3 Ed boys try to find this place. But as luck will have it, Ed, the more imaginative one, have seen way too many monster movies and now thinks that he is some sort of monster-slaying Viking named Luthor.
I am Luthor! Light King!
And seeing from previous episodes when it is in a costume, he goes bonkers bananas. So he thinks that everyone is what they dress up as, excluding Double D and Eddie of course, and thus he starts to beat the living shit out of them. And then starts the madness, the two Ed boys trying to figure out where Spookyville is, and the third one fighting and beating everyone he knows.
Earth is not your salad bar!
So this charade continues until they venture into the forest, where Ed thinks he meets a giant monster spider, who is in reality Johnny, who is looking for Plank, who is somewhere in the woods. But the three Ed boys travel further into the woods to find Spookyville, and here they meet Rolf, who of course Ed mistakes for yet another monster. So he has another vision, and they manages to escape him, and finally find Spookyville, which Double D quickly realizes is the cul-de-sac.
There's something not quite right here, Eddie.
So once again, Eddie's brother had him fooled. I think I put this episode on this spot because it's just outright crazy. I mean, it starts out innocent enough with Ed having a few visions. Can you even call it that? Anyway, as the movie progresses, they get more and more frequent until they finally have assaulted everyone they know. It's just the everyday insanity of the cul-de-sac with a Halloween theme. This special is just good. And if you like the show, then I'm sure you're gonna like this episode.
And it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. Yes, it's terror time again. Oh, you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time.
And the number one is Summerween. Gravity Falls. This might be cheating since this is Halloween in summer, but I don't care, this is a really great episode. And I'm about to tell you why. This story is about Dipper who thinks he's getting too old for Halloween, Mabel who never gets too old in her opinion, and Grunkle Stan who have to admit that what was scary in his youth probably isn't scary anymore. So Dipper is at first thrilled to hear that he can go trick-or-treating again with his sister, as they actually holds a record of being rather good at it.
Back at home, me and Dipper were kind of the kings of trick-or-treating.
But as he gets ready, Wendy, the girl he has a crush on, appears, where she states to her boyfriend Robbie that Dipper doesn't go trick-or-treating, stating that he's too old, and instead suggests that he should go with them to a Halloween party. Not quite sure what he should do or how he should tell Mabel that they're getting too old for this. He fakes being sick instead. But as all luck would have it, the Summerween trickster shows up and is really disappointed in Dipper's behavior and decides to eat them unless they bring him 500 pieces of candy before the last jack-o'-melon light goes out. So now Dipper has to go join the gang for trick-or-treating, but he still won't put on his costume. And this proves to be a major obstacle since no one gives candy to people who isn't dressed up. Meanwhile they have their fun. Grunkle Stan tries to scare some little children that goes trick-or-treating at his house, but two stubborn kids seems to be unaffected by anything he throws at them. And that's mainly it. The rest of the episode is mainly Stan trying to prank these kids while succeeding in the end, and the twins fending off the trickster. So what makes this Halloween special so good that it actually takes the cake? First of all, that trickster is sure a great monster. By the way, does he remind you of someone? Anyway, the whole idea of outgrowing trick-or-treating might be a downside for some, while it's a new opportunity for others. And this episode catches both sides rather well. It also manages to capture how monsters and scary stuff has changed throughout time, with Grunkle Stan being used to know how to scare children. But his old tricks just won't work anymore, since time changes a lot of stuff. And as said before, it got a great monster that is somewhat creepy, but at the same time, not too much so that children would get heavy nightmares. And of course, this special has candy. Candy. We get it. So that was my top 13 list of best animated Halloween specials. I hope it kept you entertained. And I'll see you
Wait. Huh?
You're out alone on a Halloween night. You hear a moan and know that something ain't right. Dead men in black, ghostly women in white. That headless horseman is a terrible sight. And now you're scared, yeah, too scared to swallow. 'Cause there's something spooky in Sleepy Hollow.